I was kind of an introverted child and spent a lot of time up in my bedroom just doing projects. So I'd go to the library and get a book on tape and then just sit on the floor of my room. This all looks so clean right now, but I often am on the floor with a halo of things around me, just sources, and that's kind of always been how I worked. I remember going into college and I was going to be a history or an English major, and I went to a small liberal arts college, the College of Worcester in Ohio, and I took those classes, and I took one art class, and I always thought, I'm going to take art, but it's not going to be my major because I can't make a career out of it. And around the beginning of my sophomore year, I had this kind of week of epiphanies, which, and I know I try not to single out these pivotal moments as pivotal moments because I know that they build over a long period of time, but I've been going through my journals a lot lately and I realized it really was this week of epiphanies, of putting things in order in my life and then kind of affirming that following art was what I needed to do, and that I think I didn't want to do it because I didn't want this process that was so important to my own mental well-being to become a stress or an obligation. Mm-hmm. And so I think I was nervous about pursuing it for that reason, and then I realized that's exactly why I should do it if it's something I care about so much and I value. Then you should try and make those things what your career is. So that was that. In that week of epiphany, I kind of found that and made studio art my major and have been very immersed in it since. The art building was in this old gymnasium, and so I had a running track, and that's where the studios were for the juniors and seniors. I had several great professors, and I had a lot of the same professors over the course of my time there because it was a very small department. And that was really great because I got to develop a relationship with some really incredible painters. My professor I was just in touch with the other week and sharing my art now, and I hadn't spoken to her in a number of years, and that was really great because she was kind of able to connect what I was doing then with what I'm doing now. Then I felt this pressure to make paintings, with a capital P. And I think my sketches were always more interesting, and she was always more interested, I think, in my sketches. And now my work feels much more reflective of, I talk about a lot at school because I'm a preschool teacher. We talk about process-oriented art and, valuing making, and it feels a lot more like that now, and I think that's why it feels more authentic now. I say, I use art as a tool, and I use journaling as a tool for kind of getting through, and I look through them now, and they're filled with starts and ideas for art. They're filled with budgets during times of transition, just lists of numbers and pages, and how am I going to work this out and do this and afford the next thing. There's a lot of pages, if you read through, you might think I was kind of grumpy. There's because I get it all out, exercise the demons into the journals. But journaling has always been a way of keeping that part of me alive. Mm-hmm. Since when I moved to New York, I went through the period, when I first moved here, I worked for an artist who had been my professor in the New York Arts program, and is now just I don't even know how to describe my relationship with her. She's a mentor, a best friend, a sister, a mother, and not this weird, I think mentor is probably the best word, but she knows me as an artist, she knows me as a student, she knows me just as a person and a teacher. She knows all these parts of myself, and she's also living the life that I aspire to live. I think especially as a woman, having female mentors is crucial to, because there's so many moments when you feel lost or overwhelmed, or just how can I make this work, or is this ever going to be seen or acknowledged? Mm-hmm. And having someone that has lived that is so important to me. The life of a teacher and the life of an artist are both, they're so similar and so different, and I have to live both of them fully because I love teaching, and teaching was something I found after realizing that I needed, we talk about those like pragmatic parts of your life. I needed routine and I needed structure to make art. And in that first year of moving back and working for Emily, I was also working at the Children's Museum of the Arts, and my schedule was very dysregulated. And my art was very dysregulated because your art is going to reflect what is going on, inside of you. Or I don't know if that's true for everyone, but that's definitely true for me. And I needed structure, and I needed routine, and I needed a career that I felt that I cared about, that I felt I was doing something meaningful in, which is why I ended up full-time in a classroom. It's really rewarding, and like you say, it's an optimistic place to be in each day. It's really hard. It's an exhausting job. It's, those little people need so much of you every day, and there's days where I get home and I want to paint, but my brain feels like a puddle. And I've gotten a lot better of having strategies to put myself, like doing yoga has been really, really helpful for putting myself back together. But it means so much to me to do something where I can share what I'm passionate about, and I'm really lucky to work in an incredible school. It's a very progressive atmosphere with very supportive parents and incredibly supportive administration. My colleagues are wonderful. I have fellow artists that I work with, and art is so valued. And I feel like I am as passionate about making art as I am about encouraging art, like other people to find the artist inside of themselves. I was also the art director of a camp for many summers up in Maine, and I had my speech working in that job where I'm yelling at everyone to shout that they are an artist, and I just really do believe that we have, everyone has that inside of them, and it's just when they can own it or how much permission they give themselves to actually acknowledge that part of themselves, and children are particularly capable of doing so. One of the artists I used to work for, I think, said that you just basically spend your whole life trying to get back into the headspace of a 3 or 4-year-old because they just pick up a paintbrush and they know what to do, and out comes them. And it's just from watching them, I found the joy in creating again, and the pressure to create something so important has really subsided, and I've really realized that if I'm thinking like them and I'm just honoring my instincts and trusting what comes out and making mistakes and really accepting that mistakes are important, because I think that's something I used to just say but not really believe. You'd be very upset about if I spilled something or something went out of line, which I think is why I'm enjoying watercolors so much, because there's so much you can't control with them. But that's what teaching has taught me, and also how to look at myself and how to learn about myself through my work, because that's what I do for the children, is I treat their artwork as kind of primary sources and helping to frame what I teach them and help me understand them. I hadn't used watercolors as my primary form until I think 3 years ago. It's very in the moment. When I sit down to paint, with this project, with my scrolls, I've take a deep breath and I close my eyes and I really scan my body, because I'm looking at these as internal self-portraits. And whenever you do that, there's a part of your body that jumps, into your head first. And I try and really think about what it feels like, imagine what it looks like. I feel like colors pop into my head that describe that feeling or that emotion that's popping up. And then I paint with that you know, in my head and in my body, and just try and live that as I'm painting. And then as I paint, kind of keeping in touch with my body and keep putting my body into the paper. My imagery is kind of grounded, and I will sometimes look up, you know, the part of my body I'm thinking about. If it's like my shoulder blade, or I feel like I have a lot of rib cage, that's often the part of my body that's jumping up. And so I'll look up those parts of my anatomy, and I ground the imagery in kind of that research and what they actually look like, but totally distort them based on, you know, what I'm thinking or feeling. And now, because it is more of a meditation body exercise, I leave a painting experience completely different from when I started, and I can follow how I changed while I was painting in reading the painting. And that's been really helpful for me. I mean, this process was really brought about by having chronic migraines. I started osteopathy, which is all about these slow, gentle movements of your body. I was already seeing a neurologist. I started reading Oliver Sacks' books on migraine. I just totally took a deep dive into what was going on in my body after getting so frustrated. I have these like calendars on my wall, and these HA are every time I get a migraine. I remember going to the neurologist for the first time and getting the list of all the potential triggers, which ranges from anything you might eat to anything you see, touch, or hear, stress, anxiety, like all of these different things. Unless you're like living that kind of experience, it's hard to really understand, because it's physical but it's more mental was the issue, was this fear of what days I was going to be able to think or not. If you looked, I mean, these are actually pretty reasonable, but if you looked back to June, which is actually kind of around when this process started, it was 2 or 3 a week, and those are days that are kind of lost or just muddy. And so I guess this is a very long way of saying that this practice wasn't necessarily designed as therapy, but has become that for me. But then also it became, thinking more about migraines and reading about them, I realized how much more these migraines affect women than men. And I've been thinking so much about being a woman right now, and like I said, like immersing myself in female voices and art and music and literature. And I think so often like women don't feel like what they are experiencing is alone valuable enough to share, that it needs to be grounded in something so much bigger in order for it to be worth communicating. And I think part of this also became, this is my experience, this is the pain that I'm having, but I can share that, and it's worth sharing because it is mine, and that is enough. And that was big and hard to come to.